Yearning to play a few rounds of Gwent. That ought to set me straight.
Welcome to Commander's Horn, once again, episode 100 episodes of Commander's Horn. Today's the day. We have Jason Slama, Director of Live Operation from CD Projekt Red, standing by on Discord. No video, unfortunately, but lots to talk about as we are celebrating a little bit, but also looking towards the future of Gwent Homecoming on this episode of Commander's Horn. Ladies and gentlemen, it is November 22nd, 2018. Happy Thanksgiving to my American friends, but I'm not with an American friend. I'm with a Canadian friend. Is that right, Jason?
Hey, what? Hey, what's up?
Jason, let's tell everybody who you are, where you're from, and what your involvement with Gwent is, because it's very exciting to have you on the podcast today.
I'm Canadian-born, originally from Quebec, although I spent many years of my life living in Ontario, including 2 years in Toronto. So,
hey.
What up? And I've been working at CD Red now for about 4 years. I was the only programmer focused on Gwent for the Witcher 3 version. So I basically did every single part of that, from AI to the UI programming to the gameplay logic, all of it.
Wow.
Very little time. And when we finally shipped Witcher 3, which was an awesome experience to get it received, I was approached to start the Gwent standalone project. So I was actually, when people were wrapping up bugs for the Witcher 3 patches, I was starting to write the first lines of code for the Gwent standalone. So that's kind of fun. I get to say I started that project, and I don't think I've ever done that before in my career. So that's actually kind of cool.
So when it came down to Wild Hunt 3, so what were you doing when, because we know bits and pieces of this famous story of Gwent being developed in over a weekend, and like the idea of like, hey, we have this new idea that isn't dice poker for Wild Hunt, it's a card game. So what were you doing when that project kind of came? Were you tasked? Was that your? I mean, I know that Rafal Yaki was involved in like that as well.
Yeah.
But this was tasked to you, the three of you, you and Damien and Rafal, to come up with something.
Well, I came later, so they're definitely the guys who came up with the original idea. I was actually doing a lot of UI work for The Witcher 3, so that was my main job. That's what ate most of my time on that project. And they had tried to outsource the actual Gwent for Witcher 3, but it wasn't really working from a visual point of view. It wasn't. You really couldn't tell what was going on. There was no, like, the concept of like round-ended message being shown before the next round start didn't even exist in this prototype. So like the flow was, you had no idea what was going on. So I remember going out and asking, can someone explain to me what this game is supposed to be? And I remember playing, so Rafal Yaki would come to me and he'd say, all right, here, they had printed version of the cards ready. So they already had a prototype. They had a strong understanding. And we played like, I think 2 to 3 matches together. And like the first one, I'm just trying to kind of figure out the rules. And I remember around the second match, I'm like, okay, I get it. You gotta like sacrifice a little bit here to win in the next one. And I remember like almost instantly kind of falling in love with that concept. I really like strategy and type of card games. I'm like, there's something here. Okay, all right, I'll make this happen. I have an idea how to do it. So let's get it done. And a couple weeks later, it's ready to go. Took a couple of very long, tiring weeks, but yeah. That's about how it went down.
It sounds like it was, and it sounds like the sprint never really stopped. I mean, you said you came. So just to everybody watching on the live stream, there are only so many things I can do to keep the stream live. I've tried very, very hard. I've adjusted all my settings. I've talked to my ISP yesterday, and there are stream difficulties. So this stream will be cutting off and on, but the full uninterrupted video will be available on YouTube, and of course this podcast will be available on the feed immediately. So thanks so much. Thanks for everybody who wants to stick with me on this live situation that is not working out very well for me. I am a little upset about that. I'm not going to let it get me down too much, as I just had another disconnect here from the studio. So I'm going to have to keep going.
Let's do it.
So
don't let it keep you down.
So it was really busy for you, and then the standalone Gwent is it gets put into the works, and you're still working on.
This just did McBeard's internet having serious trouble.
It's a serious trouble, yeah. It's just some serious trouble. So what was it like going into the standalone version of Gwent while still working on the Wild Hunt version of Gwent?
Well, I mean, the production on them wasn't at the same time for the most part, but we did add cards for the expansions, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I remember we were working on still trying to prepare our first demos for the E3 and everything, and we wanted to add in a whole new faction for, I believe it was for Blood and Wine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Skellige was
Time flies. I'm pretty sure I'm right there, but maybe I'm wrong, so please don't hurt me if I am. And because it had been done in such a short amount of time, like it was working, but it was working like by holding together by sheer force of will. And so just adding another faction it took so long. It was so painful, and we had split focus. But we managed to get her done. We got some help from some other people in the studio to help make that happen. But yeah, when you make something that fast, there's definitely a price to pay.
Yeah, I believe the term you used when we talked. So Jason and I, we talked. It was the Saturday of the last Gwent Open. You were in the studio. Yeah. You were actually watching the event, and you said that if you sneezed on it,
oh yeah, just a sneeze. Yeah.
The code for Wild Hunt Gwent was made so fast that if you sneezed on it, the whole thing would fall apart. So yeah, more care these days, I imagine, put into that. We were also on that day we talked about some of the design contributions that you had given to Gwent, and there was some really interesting stuff because it sounds like you have like all these different kind of pieces of Gwent that you've touched like throughout your tenure at the company. It seems like you've got a little design experience, you've got obviously the live operations experience and the development experience, the coding experience, but you've also done some conceptual stuff as well.
I really believe in the project as having potential, and I really want to see it succeed. And even though I've specialized in programming most of my career, I just love game development. I used to make mods before I started over 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. I love everything about game development, even though it can be soul-drainingly difficult sometimes. But you got to keep soldiering on. And so especially in the first half year of Gwent before we started to really grow. It was a really indie small team environment where everyone was kind of pitching in and throwing ideas. So some of mine stuck.
Mm-hmm. And what were some of those ideas? Because I remember you told me about a couple of them.
Yeah, it's hard to remember them all, but I remember talking about the idea of throwing, because we're trying to find new ways to make mechanics in Gwent. Yeah, because the Witcher 3 version of Gwent, it was pretty simple. And I remember thinking in siege warfare, in those days, you can't really fight disease like you can. There's no penicillin and stuff. So I think I saw in a movie or in a book somewhere the idea of throwing a cow carcass at the enemy to poison them behind the eyes. And why don't we just have a card that when you play it throws, and and when we were pitching it, there was the idea of the actual cow flying from the card and landing on the other side of the board, which turned out to be much more difficult than we ended up not doing. But thematically, hey, I'm throwing this carcass, so that was the rot tosser. Yeah. I remember going ghouls, they like to eat corpses, so make them go into the graveyard and eat stuff. Or I always like the idea. Some of my ideas are just ridiculous and they never got in, and probably for very good reason. But I really like the idea of finding abilities or things that really synergize with the theme of a card. That's always fun for me.
I feel like a lot of the new cards are doing that, and it's interesting because in Thronebreaker, in one of the acts, you find out a missive from the Nilfgaardian army, and it's telling them how to prepare the cow carcasses for the rot tosser. So this rot tosser
oh my God,
thing,
I saw that. That made my day.
It was awesome. So great because it's the rot tosser is a Gwent-born thing, but it's something that sounds very Nilfgaardian. At all, Nilfgaardian seems doesn't matter how bad it is, they'll do it to get the advantage. So it was just really good.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. So were there any other good ideas that Like how do you when you give a good idea to the development team, like you say, hey, what if we do something like a rot tosser where like a cow carcass goes over and does something to the opposing side of the board? Is there like a short list of like ideas like that get implemented? Like what's the process there, if you can share it at all?
You're cutting out right now. I'm not hearing the last part of that question.
All right.
Sorry.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop streaming. So thanks to everybody who's watching the video. If you get this at all, I'm going to stop the stream, but I'm going to keep the recording because I'm having just all sorts of crazy new issues in this morning that I've never seen before on my computer. So the streaming is now, it's going to stop trying to reconnect me, and it's probably going to be a little bit easier on my computer. So I'm just going to let the chat know this right now.
Sorry, man. Sorry that's happening.
I mean, in 100 podcasts, this has never happened, actually.
It's just to celebrate the 100th, to make it extra challenging, so you really deserve it, yeah?
Yeah, I really deserve it. That's how
make
it feels.
It special.
I feel like I deserve this. This is wonderful.
Oh,
all
my
right.
God. Frozen again. Oh, I hear that sigh. It keeps that, though, yeah?
Yeah, it keeps the sigh of exasperation. Okay. I was saying that you had the idea for the rot tosser and the idea for ghouls eating out of the graveyard. And if you have, if you get the ideas like that, like where do you pitch these ideas? Do these ideas get into like a short list of things that will be implemented later? Like what's the process of getting these good ideas into the game?
Well, I mean, let me start off by saying that there's like a team of designers like Luigi and Machicostre and many others whose sole job is to figure this stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
Really make sure that it's fun and interesting, and they're the real heroes between making the cards. But you know, especially way back in the early days of Gwent, we were a small team, so no one, and still to this day, to be fair, we just talk to each other. Yeah, we just kind of, hey man, I had this cool idea. Have you thought about it? And it was just, you know, shooting the stuff, and you know, I'm a guy who throws ideas all over the place, maybe annoyingly so to some people. Some of them tend to stick, so maybe I don't feel so bad about it.
No, I mean it's always good to contribute something you think would be really fun for everybody involved in a project, really. So I think that's maybe that's just a Canadian quality. It could be.
I don't know. I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, the idea of like putting new fun things in the game and having these great ideas. You had a great idea, the reward book, and you shared this with us, with Paul Berja, shortly before the launch of Homecoming. I think it was fun. Like, yeah, it was a lot of fun. You did the live stream. The current picture that I have on the video right now is you at the table for that one. And it was a pretty big one. It looks like a lot of thought went into it. It was like a very realized, full-featured thing that we weren't expecting. When did the work start? Like, did the idea grow over time? And are you happy with the feedback about the system so far?
Yeah, I'm super happy with the feedback about the system. I think it's actually quite fun and interesting. I can say that it kind of like started, I don't know, 5-6 months ago, or, you know, around the time we announced Homecoming is actually when it started. And I was thinking, okay, so Homecoming, we've decided as a group to release the game, like make it a finished product. And I was thinking to myself, from live ops, like, or from user engagement, you know, online user experience, outside of the actual core match, what are we missing? And, you know, like one of the pillars there that was broadcasted that I took to heart was like, you know, breaking it more into The Witcher, making it feel more dark and stuff. I'm like, you know, what's more Witcher or RPG-ish than an actual skill tree? I felt like maybe that would be really cool to incorporate there. So, you know, I took a good friend of mine in the Live Ops team who helps me run it, and I said, I have a crazy idea. And, you know, I'm babbling and I'm just talking high level RPG, skill tree, like Path of Exile. And I'm like, okay. And then we just started brainstorming and you know, and then we're like, well, there's no way we're going to be able to do this. That's just too much. And then we just like, okay, but screw it. Let's try to look at what we can do. Let's start, you know, thinking about it. And, you know, over the next month, we started getting the design out. Over the month after that, we got the UI design done. And a great bunch of guys helped us out here to make it happen. You know, those trees are super awesome drawings. The layouts weren't, you know, we actually had a data analyst / designer come in and actually make those for us. He did a really awesome job, and it was just a lot of fun. I can't share them, but I mean, there's like some reward trees, the drawings that were just like two Aracastas giving each other a high five, and I'm like, that's hilarious, but I'm not sure that should go in. I think
oh man,
day, like he actually has that as his desktop on his computer.
Two Aracas like queens, like behemoths, or just like little drones,
well,
like.
Yeah, like the actual Ericus tree. Yeah, they're not high fiving right now, but they're actually like high fiving in one of the mock-ups that they did. It's pretty funny.
That's really funny. I would like to see that though one day.
The guys really had fun with it, for sure.
So
yeah, we just got it done.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people like it. I think it's great. I like every couple of like 5 or 10 ranked games, I realize that I achieved something else, even though like I'm starting to fill out some of the basic ones. But I think it's great. I think it's a great thing for the new players. I think it's always great to kind of choose your own reward. You received a lot of praise from the community after your appearance on the live stream, and you got to see like the firsthand feedback based on that presentation. Did you read Reddit? Did you read the forums?
Oh, I read everything.
Everything.
I read everything. I really do care, you know.
Yeah.
I put that stuff out there because I thought it would be fun, and I really wanted to. I was actually looking for more criticisms. If anything, I was a bit disappointed with the lack of criticism. Like, it can't be that good. It can't. I'll tell you what my favorite post was in a post called I think I love Jason Slama. At the bottom, some guy says, "Is it just me, or is this guy a psychopath boss who's probably torturing all his underlings or something along those lines?"
Oh my god!
I was just loving it so much. I'm like, yes, there's the contrast. There's I don't know why. Maybe I'm masochist. I love. It made me laugh.
You know that everybody sees like the twisted version of everything. So even if something is great, there's something like twisted behind it. It's like, yeah, there's something behind that smile. No one's that nice.
Exactly. Like I don't think he was actually accusing anything. He's like, it's just me, and I just thought it was like, yeah, that's funny. There you go. We need some contrast in life. That's funny.
But that's good. Yeah, but the community seems to really be liking the reward system. In fact, it's weird because it was such a universally like accepted and appreciated thing. It's almost like there's nothing much to say about it anymore. Like it's doing what it's doing. It's doing a good job.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how can I improve it if you know everyone's just happy with it?
I mean, we want to know what these seasonal trees are going to look like, and we're going to want to know like. This wasn't on the approved. This wasn't on our list of questions. So if you can't answer it, that's cool. But we know that the Mahakam season is there. We know it's not actually the Mahakam season. We are getting titles for it, so we know that the system is working for tracking our ranked wins. But we don't know what the actual ranked system is going to look like. Yeah,
the season's running, but like I think we were actually starting to make the seasonal trees in about like a few weeks before we actually launch. I'm like, okay, well, we have a lot to do. And maybe we could do something more interesting and fun with the seasonal stuff, something that changes the game or the way you interact with the reward book every month.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing a lot of things right now. I don't feel like we've nailed down exactly how we were going to achieve that for the seasons, but I want the seasonal trees to be not like all the other trees. I want them to be something special. So I'm not quite ready to reveal what that's going to be yet, just in case that, you know, we change our mind or the details change. But I can say like this fundamental spirit, and the reason they're not there right now, because we could have released them by now and have them. I want them to be special. I don't want to like release like a standard version of them and then have to change them the next year or a few months down the line. I feel like we could do something cooler with the reward book, and the seasonal trees are a great opportunity for that.
Yeah, I mean, like as a base thing, the reward book is like very clear in its intention, and I like that. And I think that's a lot of the things that the people that are really kind of like really into the game right now are feeling like, you know, with Homecoming and like a lot of these fundamental changes, and we're talking about future changes. And I know we can't talk about some of the changes that were, I guess, leaked. You know, there is some stuff that kind of came in through that, like some changes that are upcoming that, as this is a Gwent
working hard.
Yeah, they're working hard. We can't talk or confirm anything, I know, but it is nice to know that we have like this foundation that we're building on, and the reward book is like clearly like it looks good from a base level. All the leaders are there, the factions are there, seasons are coming.
I can give you one preview, and that's there will be other pages of the reward book starting next year.
Oh, that's great news.
We're definitely expanding there, and it'll be releasing new content through it. So that's definitely something to look forward to.
That's good stuff. It's good stuff. And it feels like, you know, the reward book and a lot of the other stuff that's in the game right now, especially when we're talking about like the in-between game experience, like it's everything has been very fan oriented, and Gwent itself, the game itself did like fan interest is what kind of made this project kind of go, right? We're talking about the standalone project. Like,
yep, definitely.
Yeah. So the standalone interest came from, so Wild Hunt is out, Gwent is out. Wild Hunt is getting a great reception. People are making Gwent memes in the Wild Hunt in the Witcher subreddit.
Gwent is getting like almost sub reviews. Gwent is getting a mod that makes all the battles in Witcher 3 a Gwent match instead of an actual thing. We're like, wow.
Yeah. So
all right, let's not ignore that. People like it, so let's do more.
Yeah. So Gwent has always been a fan project from the very start.
Yeah, that's the idea. I mean, let's make something we know people want. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean,
definitely, we heard loud and clear that there was definitely an interest for us to do more, and we did.
Yeah, and I think that this is, you know, it's continued to be a more and more and bigger project, especially with Thronebreaker going from it being kind of like a single player experience to its own standalone. But yeah. I mean, it's such a great experience for the fan with all the rewards and beta players. I mean, there was a little bit of criticism that that I saw, and that's what if CD Projekt Red is being too generous? I mean, does it take the chase away from us? Does it make it so, you know, are you losing money on the deal, giving us all these premium cards and giving so many players full collections? Like, what was the thought process there?
Well, okay, so you know, I don't want to get into like the actual economics and calculations that we're doing on our side and getting into our numbers and everything, but I can say that I don't. And from the beginning of this project, I don't like the idea of you having to grind a long time to play, you know, a game. I'm not a huge fan of a paywall behind actually being able to enjoy a game, but it's still at the same time fun to make progression in a collection and to grow and to get all this stuff. So we tried to find a healthy balance, and we believed if we made a fun game, then, you know, what would follow would naturally be, you know, we would find a way to monetize them. And, you know, instead of trying to, you know, monetize on the level of you have to spend money to even play the deck that you want, we wanted to like make the idea of getting a full collection an actual possible thing without actually having to spend ridiculous amounts of time and money. And I feel like we found a pretty decent balance, because you can't just fill your whole collection like that, you know, it's not so easy, but at the same time you don't have to spend ridiculous amount of hours to do 2 decks.
Yeah, like the new player experience seems to be like you're probably going to get to spend a month, you know, getting to the ranked mode, getting maybe your first couple of leaders unlocked, maybe committing to a tree and maybe filling out that collection. But over time, I mean, if you just want to look at a really strong deck, being able to secure the materials required to make like one of the strongest decks in the game, it doesn't seem harder to make like the best deck than it does to make like any other deck, because, you know, the resources don't seem, the resource economy seems pretty good. It just seems like we're getting more things. So I think that's really great. And like you've seen, I mean, we've seen over the time of Gwent kind of going into closed beta, into open beta, into kind of like the series of event-based stuff, and then the arena patch, and then midwinter. And I mean, you've been part of the project since the very beginning. What has it been like to follow this game from the very beginning and all its ups and downs? And you know, what is it like to follow content on your own project like that?
It's strange as hell. It's been interesting trying to figure out what we want to do. I feel like we're finally getting to a point where we know what we want to do. We just need to start iterating and polishing on it. I honestly don't expect us to do another big complete rework. I think we're at a point where we have a solid foundation. We just need to tweak it and polish it from where we are. I mean, it's been such a, you know, a pursuit for making things so perfect or awesome the way we wanted it, that, you know, we need to start just polishing what we have, and then really start getting into a regular cadence of just adding content and keeping the game growing without necessarily rebuilding all the fundamentals. I mean, throughout this whole time, some fundamentals haven't changed. The concept of gold cards didn't exist in The Witcher 3. It's something we tried in the standalone. So, you know, gold immunity, same thing, was something we tried in the closed beta. It was restricting us in a bit in terms of design space, so we got rid of it. I was constantly trying to find that right balance. I wouldn't be surprised if we keep playing with that kind of stuff just until we get it right, but I don't think we're going to like fundamentally make a gigantic change like we did. Again, at least I hope not.
I mean, I like that personally. Like as a content creator, like, you know, I follow some other card games as well, and one of the most exciting times is they call it spoiler season. You know, new content is coming, new cards are coming out every day. You know, all the content's you know, everybody, the community's buzzing about it. They're talking about this new card and what it can do, and it's been a while since we've gotten new like like feeling like we have a new card and we actually can apply this card to the current landscape of the cards that we have. Because what's been happening more often is that the game has been changing.
Yeah.
Everything's been changing, so everything's a new card and everything's a new landscape. So that evaluation process, especially now with the recruit cost system, now understanding like how we can actually evaluate these cards. Is it worth the cost? Is it too good? Is it not good enough? That kind of thing. I'm really looking forward to that sort of that. I'm looking forward to that review season.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think I personally was a bit skeptical of provisions at the beginning, but I think it was pretty well executed. I think it's super interesting.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, just seeing that one hotfix where, power level of cards did not change at all, but restrictions changed the way how strong your deck could be if you wanted to commit to that. And that seems to be the intention of the whole thing. You can't put everything great in your deck, or the idea that if you have 4 gold slots, you just put in the 4 best gold cards and nothing else in your deck is affected. And it's not like that anymore. And I think that it's limiting, like that and hand limit, like a lot of stuff limits sort of greediness, and you need to find like very, very specific parts and like moments in the game in which you can actually exercise that greed. Or it feels like Vintage Gwent was about kind of exercising the greed from start to finish, right from the deck builder all the way to the end. So that's like that's a subtle change I like.
I mean, if you compare like the Witcher 3 Gwent to what we ended up doing, even from the closed beta, in Witcher 3 Gwent, like you could have power creep in the cards. Like at its core, you know, I think I even said this in an interview once. You start the game out with, you know, your wooden sword, and as the RPG goes, you get that silver sword, and then you get, you know, your gold sword of destiny, and then you're super awesome. And we could do that with the cards in Gwent. Yeah, we started you with, you know, ghouls that are 2 power, no ability, and then later on in the game you get like a 16 power Geralt, and you just replace those cards.
Yeah.
When you're making a multiplayer game, we couldn't really do that. I mean, we didn't want to just create, I don't know, 100 cards that were just meant to be replaced. It just didn't feel like that was a good way to go. And I feel like the gold, silver, bronze mentality that we had was kind of interesting to go in that direction. But I definitely think provision takes us to the next level where you sort of have more decision on whether you're putting powerful cards or gold cards, and letting you sort of decide and mix mash it without putting like a restriction on a specific number of gold cards, which definitely opens the door for better balancing and more interesting deck building, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of addresses a long-term community request to not have 4 gold cards and maybe have 7 silver cards. They always wanted to have like early on. It was like this customization. They asked for it. They asked for it constantly. Like it was like, why do I have to have 6 silvers? What if I traded it for another bronze slot or something like that? But yeah, that's basically how we do it now. You are making trades and you are making concessions to have stuff in your deck, and I think that is better than maybe people just thought it would be trading a silver for a gold. This is actually a system that has like really long-term constructed.
It's fantastic
possibilities. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
I want to talk to you about so when you came in, at what point, like Rafal and Damien had Gwent, you were implementing it. It was already kind of concepted at that point, but you've got to see the project grow just from the very, very basis, from the very code that you wrote. Seeing the project grow to be I guess what it is now, like, is it different from your point of view on your side? It's as projects come together. Or is it like, is it always meeting your expectations, or are you, like, how far ahead are you in the development process? I guess I'm just trying to understand like what your POV is as you see things grow, because we see it as from the player's point of view. And even someone who's visited the studio, we still see it kind of flow differently. We see the stuff that faces us first. What is it like to watch people react to the stuff in the present while also moving towards working on stuff in the future and seeing everything grow from the very beginning?
I mean, that's like 100 questions.
Yeah, it's 100 questions. I think I tried to find where I wanted to end on that question. I think pay attention to maybe the last part. Yeah.
I think that we've spent the last, I mean, some people felt like, hey, we've been in beta so long now. Are we really still in beta? And I feel like up until Homecoming, we've still been trying to like figure out what we want from the product, figure out what kind of game we want to be, and all that stuff. And I feel like it's time for us right now to just start reflecting on exactly where we want to go and just head that way. And I'm really excited to see where we go from there. I feel like we've had an opportunity to learn a lot of lessons. I mean, it's a new team. From Witcher 3, it's for a lot of us, it was a huge learning experience. We learned a lot of lessons. Some things we did well, some things we did bad. And it's time to really think about where we want to go next. And I have a lot of hope for the future that we'll do some really awesome stuff, and that we can live up to some of your amazing expectations.
Yeah, Gwent has done a lot of things in its beta period that no gaming company has done, basically completely relaunching the game with like a number of mechanical and fundamental changes along the way. It's kind of changed the idea of like what a beta should be. It seems like you're building a card game without having card game experience. You use the beta to get that card game experience, and like you said, you've learned and reflected, and now felt like you could create a better card game. One of CD Projekt Red's long-standing mantras are "We are rebels." Do you feel like the way that the beta was handled here was rebellious in nature, pushing back on expectations of other games, setting maybe like 1 or 2 day betas where no changes are expected at all? How do you feel like the beta was ultimately handled as we are moving towards this December 4th kind of grand opening with consoles and everything like that?
Whew, you're asking for some big reflections here.
This is my last big reflective question, I promise. Like the next questions are really easy.
I mean, again, you I have to think it for a second, if you'll hold me.
Sure.
Definitely we made decisions that would definitely follow the mantra of "We are rebels," in the sense of, if we think that it's better for the game, we're just going to try and do it. And we're definitely need to reach a point where, which I think we're pretty much at, which you'll start seeing us do more and more as we go forward, where we know who we are as a product, and we can really start growing from there. Because definitely reinventing ourselves and all those risks we did, I'm glad we did it. We learned those lessons, but at the same time, it's very, very difficult to move forward when you're constantly reinventing. And I think it's time we start moving forward.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's a good place to leave the heavy Gwent discussion and like the big reflective questions. How are you for time right now, Jason?
I think we got to wrap up soon.
Wrap
maybe
up.
One more question.
Well, I'm going to ask you the question I wanted to ask you. What was your favorite game growing up? Like, what's like an iconic game for Jason Slama? As he's what's a game that kind of defined? I always like asking this, especially people in the video game industry, because it's really interesting to me. So what did you like?
I grew up, not counting the consoles like NES and all that stuff from when I was really, really a kid. Growing up, we didn't have PC, we only had a Mac. And so like I was really limited in the games that I could play. So but it didn't matter, because in 1998 they released StarCraft, and I loved that game. And I remember learning how to make games. I remember like making mods for StarCraft. I don't think I ever did anything like noteworthy or amazing, but I remember that's what like sparked my creativity and said, hey, maybe I can actually make stuff with this stuff. And that's basically probably why I am where I am today, because of StarCraft and eventually Warcraft 3, which are 2 games that I just really, really spent countless hours either playing or making mods for.
Have you played Warcraft 3 Reforged? Is it out yet?
I don't think it's out yet.
Oh, it's not out yet. Are you excited to play it?
I'm super tempted to just actually play it as soon as it's out.
Yeah.
Just out of nostalgia.
I might play it a little bit. I played a lot of Warcraft 3 as well. I played Diablo 2 is my crazy just up all night game. I did play a lot of
Diablo 2. Yeah, see, because Blizzard released everything. So
yeah,
like I said, there wasn't really anything else.
The Blizzard trifecta right there was so strong to like me in my 20s around that time.
But I didn't really feel like I was missing out, because these were such awesome games that they just did everything I needed them to. It kept me. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was really just
memories.
Computer gaming at its core, like RTS. You get your RTS. You get your. Well, I mean, it was all RTS.
Hidden cow level runs, yeah.
Yeah, RTS and dungeon loot. Like they created a genre with Diablo, and they just did it. I think it was because it was so arcade style and just hack and slash, exploding corpses all over the place. It was like you could tell it was like the way it was made was the hack and slash arcade style of it was probably just a product of the way it was, like the product of what was possible in development, but that kind of like campy feel, like I feel like the stuff that was made in the 90s and the stuff that was made in the early 2000s, like games are trying to like keep, like when they reboot games or they release games, like look at Smash Brothers Melee, like they're going to try to keep as much of the, like the way you dash around the stage, the way like all the moves work on everything. It's got to be like legacy to like Smash Brothers Melee, I guess, is like the gold standard. And like even like Dota 2, like you still like chop the tree down to use the thing in that archaic way that Warcraft 3's mod made you heal. Like it's just the way that it's just the way it is. So that's why I like when I see new games come out that can throw away these things that kind of get grandfathered in and actually make these new games and see how they stand. Because if the game tried to just reboot itself and take all those things out, it would be looked at like a travesty. Like how could you take all this stuff out? It's so core to the game. Whereas a new game might thrive in the same way. I feel a little bit about Homecoming, a little bit about stuff like that, where it's a new game, some things aren't in it, some things are in it. If Gwent Homecoming was a new card game, I feel like it would be received a little bit differently just because of how much cool stuff is in there, but it's constantly fighting against its the shadow of its former self.
I mean, change is rough.
Yeah.
Change is hard, and you know, you love the things you love, it's hard to see them change.
It is. That is a great way to put it. It's a great way to put it. Jason, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry that this didn't go as smoothly and as wonderfully as I wanted it to, but really all I wanted was to have a great conversation with a Gwent guy on my episode 100, and that's what I got, and that's what all the listeners got as well.
I still can't believe you got to 100 episodes already. You're crazy.
And there's like, what is it, maybe six or seven of those weeks I didn't do an episode. So, yeah, over 2 years. 2 years was just in August. So, yeah.
I mean, I had to come on. I had to live stream with you just to thank you so very much for doing this. Thank you for being such an awesome, positive Canadian.
Hey, thanks. Hockey hosers, you and me. Right. You know what's going on.
Yeah, let's go.
All right. That was. I mean, this has just been great. I will get this. I'll see if I can even do like a Twitch premiere or some way to get this live as soon as possible for everybody. But thanks for taking the time this morning. I hope you have a good rest of the week, and I hope the news. I hope Gwent Skirmisher is coming up, so I'm going to be pretty busy. And then after that stuff, next week, whenever it comes, whenever news and whenever announcements come, I hope you're there because people like hearing stuff come from you, and I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to sharing more of our awesome shit coming.
Okay. Well, then, thanks very much, Jason. Have a great night.
See ya.